right, welcome to SMU Stories. I am Lindsay Brown. I'm an SMU Devman class of 2013 from the law school and a partner at Jackson Walker. And today we have a real treat for you. We have Meghan Guffey of Bea Colette. Meghan, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Yes, I am Meghan Guffey. I also graduated from SMU in 2012. I was a communication journalism major, and I am from St. Louis.
Awesome. Okay, so St. Louis to SMU. Why did you pick SMU? How did you end up in Dallas?
So, to be totally honest, it was actually the only school I got into. My dream was to go to USC in California. My dad went to SMU, and I actually played tennis at SMU my first year. And although it wasn't necessarily my first choice, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So it all worked out in the best way, truly. But I'd always known about it from my dad, and then just kind of kept on my radar. And the high school I graduated from had a really good just connection with SMU. So it was always kind of like in the realm for me. And then it worked out, and it was definitely some of the best years of my life. And definitely the best thing that ever happened to me from a career perspective and like launching my career.
Okay, I have to know. So tennis your first year of college, was that like pretty intense to have to
It didn't end well
juggle?
because I couldn't, I got much more preoccupied with my social life. And so I had to call it quits with tennis, but I'm glad I did it for a little bit. And then I was so burnt out. So I chose sorority life over tennis life, but it was a good experience, and it was the right decision to move on.
Yeah,
For sure.
totally. Okay, so you said that SMU was the best decision as far as like your career goes, connections. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, today I'm still very best friends with all of my girlfriends from college. I would also say from a sorority perspective, I was a cap at SMU, and our network was just amazing and still is. And I feel like I still can easily reach out to any of my sorority sisters, whether they were in my pledge class or not, and just, be like, hey, it's Meghan, haven't seen you in 15 years, and then they'll respond right away, if it's helping me with something, or there's just a very close-knit community, and not just with my own sorority, but like the Greek life in general.
Mm-hmm.
But from a career perspective, one of my very best friends, I always knew I wanted to move to New York after college. One of my very best friends who went to SMU, she connected me with someone who was in New York when I had graduated, who worked at Condé Nast at the time. And it's like through my SMU connections that I've gotten almost every either job opportunity foot in the door and made an introduction to someone at, my future employer. So all of my jobs kind of tie back to a network, a connection at SMU.
So major was journalism at
Yes.
SMU. What was like the biggest life lesson that you learned while in college?
That's a good question. So a couple of things. Journalism was not my long-term path, but I was a good writer, and I knew it aligned with my strengths, and I had always kind of wanted to work in fashion journalism, writing at a at the time like Vogue or Harper's Bazaar, one of those. Feels so long ago and so dated because print is suffering so much, but I knew that I had interest in that, and so the journalism school was great for two reasons. One, we had to get up and do this like morning update class at 6:30 a.m. So it created a structure for me that even though if I went out the night before, I knew I had to get up and just, face real world. It kind of felt like a job. The second thing is that the journalism school, what was so great about it is the classes are very small, so you can't go off the rails. Like if you start falling behind in any class, your teacher's just going to kind of grab your elbow on your way out and say to you, hey, you're falling, or your paper was not in line with what it normally is, or they really can kind of catch you before you fall. And for someone who really liked to be social and party and have a lot of fun in college, I kind of needed that. It reminded me of high school in a way that it was like very small classroom setting. People were really watching out for you. You had to, meet a certain GPA. And I felt like I was just kind of being taken care of in that way. And yeah, not going off the rails.
Yeah. It's like in a way, small class sizes like that. I remember being so envious of my friends that, were at UT and they had like 450 people in a huge auditorium class. But I think what you're saying is a very good point that sometimes those smaller class sizes really do help you, even though at the
Yeah.
time it might be a little bit,
It was no
frustrating.
opportunity to go sit in like the 10th, no, the 20th, whatever row
Uh-huh.
of the auditorium. These were tiny, tiny classrooms with, some of them were like a really small niche writing topic class, and there were 8 people in it. So it was like, if you were
Wow.
missing, well, you just couldn't really miss. I think we had maybe 2 absences the whole semester. So it was good in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. So, um, after college, tell me about your next steps. Like what did you do? What were your prospects with your career and what did you end up doing right after college?
So I moved to New York in July of 2012. My parents said, you have until December of this year to find a job. They didn't care what I did. They were just like, you have to be, we're only going to help you out for so long. Um, I think it was Hurricane Sandy, when that hit in November,
Mm,
I mentioned this at the beginning, but of a friend was working at Condé Nast at the time. And she was like, we really need an assistant to help on the advertising side of things. Um, the past 4 people didn't show up because they couldn't make it in because of Sandy. They were out. So my mom got me a hotel room in Times Square. I went for this interview. I was like the only person who would show up just for the interview. And they basically gave me the job because they were just like, you so eagerly want this job. And I had no idea what I was even really interviewing for. It was an ad sales assistant at Glamour magazine. Um, I didn't even really understand the advertising side of the business at that time. I thought it was all just like writing stories and, curating fashion pics and beauty
mm-hmm.
pics. Didn't understand that advertising is really what, generates the actual revenue.
Right.
That was kind of like lost on me, but then I learned that really quickly because I got the job. I assisted the beauty reps, so their major advertisers were L'Oreal and Clarins and Estee Lauder companies, and so their job was to sell in these massive brands, sell them ad pages into Glamour and ad spots on the website. So I learned a ton from them, and I ended up actually moving into the direction of ad sales as a whole and went from an assistant to being an ad sales rep at Architectural Digest. I was there for like 3.5 years or so. Um, and really just went down the path of ad sales. I loved it because being, an athlete my whole life,
Mm-hmm.
I needed that competitive kind of fill and just a number to hit. And it was just like, I would get my quarterly quota. And, if it was, I have to sell in $10 million of ad revenue or whatever it was, just tracking towards that and then going beyond it. And, you get obviously bonuses beyond it. And all those things kind of filled that sports like competition that I needed.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
anyways, after AD, I went to Cargo, which is a mobile ad firm, and which was great for me because I was selling primarily print and I knew I needed to go like headfirst into the digital mobile world because that's where all advertising dollars were starting to shift. I was there for about 2 years too, and that was great because that was when I was at Condé Nast. It was like everyone knew who Architectural Digest was, everyone knew who Glamour was. There was no cold calling. It was very much like built-in legacy relationships. I was more nurturing relationships,
Mm-hmm.
more so, being a farmer, if you will. And then when I went over
Yeah.
to Fargo, I was like, I now need to become a hunter and go cold call and find all these advertisers who would work with us. So that was amazing because it was a pretty startup environment, but it was growing like crazy. And then after that, I went to Amazon, which is like the total opposite because, Amazon's obviously a behemoth, but went and worked in their programmatic advertising team, which is like the automated form of digital advertising. It's like real-time bidding advertising. And I worked on the consumer electronics list. And Amazon was great in so many ways. I loved my manager there and I loved the team, but it's just too big for me. I was like, I didn't feel like I could make a dent.
Mm-hmm.
I also felt like if I didn't show up to work for 4 days, I don't even know if anyone would really notice because it's
Right.
just so big. Um, so I was only there for a year and I honestly probably would have stayed, but I got a call from a mentor of mine who was helping to build this team over at Something Navy, which was an influencer turned lifestyle brand at the time where Ariel Charnas was leading it. She was the influencer and her kind of like influencer blog name was Something Navy.
Mm-hmm.
She she partnered with a guy who's going to be the CEO, and they launched it into not just like her influencer brand where she would do advertising partnerships, but also develop a clothing line. So they're kind of like two parts of the business. Um, my mentor, her name is Kim. She's amazing. She was like, I think you could be the head of advertising sales or partnership sales for this startup. I think you would be really aligned to your skill set. You love fashion. You're savvy on Instagram, things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed. I loved Ariel. I loved the team. And I went over there. That was at the start of 2020. So, wow, 5 years ago.
Yep.
And that was like true startup. I think I was, employee number 6 or 7. So, and by the time I left there, which was middle of 2022, I think we had like 40 people. So it had grown in the
So you went
startup.
from Amazon
Yes.
to the sixth employee at something Navy.
Yes. And
Was
it's
that
funny
like a
because,
scary situation? How did you feel about that transition?
well, who was not that happy was my husband because we, when I went on Amazon, I think the stock price was like $1,300. Like I would be doing really well in life if I had stayed there and held on to all those RSUs and just let them
Mm-hmm.
vest over time.
Yep.
But the other thing was I was pregnant when I took this job at Something Navy. So I was in a position at Amazon to get this like phenomenal 5 to 6 month maternity leave. And then
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you know what? I feel really passionate about Something Navy and I really like the startup life. It's much more for me. So Peter, my husband, let me run with it. And then COVID hit. So it was like obviously a little bit of culture shock going back to a startup. However, I had had my startup experience from Cargo, the mobile ad firm I'd worked at. So
Mm-hmm.
it was smaller than that, but it was like similar to that. And then I could feel the progress I was making. You can very immediately see the impact you can have. And it's just fun I learned I really love to grow something from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
But then COVID hit. We ended up moving from New York. I lived in New York this whole time, from New York to Dallas. And they were awesome. They let me move to Dallas and they didn't even really care where we all lived at the time because no one really knew what was going to happen with COVID. Everyone was like,
Right.
we don't
Right.
know if we're ever returning to work.
People from New York were running anywhere they
Especially in
could,
New York.
right?
Like New York was just, I was 7 months pregnant and I was like, we got to get out of here.
So
Like,
why was it Dallas? Was it like you had lived in Dallas before, you were comfortable with it? Did Peter have a job opportunity? Like what was
so Peter did get a job in Dallas. So he also got that job kind of right when I got the Something Navy job. So we were kind of like, what are we going to do here? Because he knew he needed to move back to Dallas.
mm,
Before I had accepted Something Navy, uh, I was like, oh, I can place a request to transfer in Amazon. That would have been an easier process because they have an office in Dallas.
yeah.
Um, I think we were actually considering doing like long distance with the baby until I figured out how I could move to Dallas. It was like very weird. The whole thing was
Yeah, that's
really not
something that's like that's thought about, like, oh, we can make this work. But I mean, could you
it
even
was like, it's
imagine?
so silly now that I have kids thinking about that. Being alone in my apartment, whatever. Just so it was like such a, never had kid. We can do anything. We're fine.
Oh, it's like the whole thing of like you're the best parent. I mean, it's so many things. It's like you're the best parent before you have kids. It's like I'll never give my kid an iPad at a restaurant,
Right, right.
before you
Yes,
have kids. And then you get there, you're like, okay, how many iPads do we have on us? Let's make sure we're equipped before you go
yes.
anywhere.
That's
It's
a great analogy.
you just don't know.
Yeah. So and to give more context on why Dallas. So Peter, my husband, is from Houston. I went to school at SMU and I've always felt a pull back to Dallas. I love Dallas.
Hmm.
And he had visited a few times. I mean, he liked it. And then he got a great opportunity with a private equity firm here. So it was kind of just like, okay, Megan will figure out. He was like, prove yourself at Something Navy, then I bet they'll let you move. Like we were just not really thinking about it. But then
Yeah.
COVID hit and weirdly it worked out for us. Like obviously not happy that COVID happened, but
Right.
that did give us the flexibility to move here, which was really the best thing that has ever happened to us just for our family and like finding
Can you
community.
imagine raising the kids in New York? Like how different life would be?
So part of me is like, that would be amazing before they're in school, like when you're just
Uh-huh.
strolling them around. But then if anyone from New York listens to this, I don't mean to offend you, but I'll never forget opening my friend who lives there apartment one day and the door wouldn't open all the way because it was hitting all the strollers. Like it was just so cramped.
Yes.
And that was my sign that I was like, I need space and I need
Yeah.
greenery and I like to drive. So I want to have access to my car and I
Hmm.
don't want to suit my kid up when it's really cold. And have them like put on 6 layers. Like that is why I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So anyways, so we moved here and then I was at Something Navy for 2.5 years. By the time I left, we had a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And I was leading a team of, I think, 7 when I left, and everyone was starting to go back to the office. And honestly, like being the head of sales, I just was like, this is not right. I should be with them. I had so much anxiety. I was flying to New York once a month.
Oh,
I
wow.
just felt like I couldn't lead that camaraderie that every sales team needs to get
Mm-hmm.
excited. And like, I had previous jobs when we'd make a sale, we'd like hit a gong and it was just like so
Yeah.
fun. And I couldn't infuse that type of energy working from home. There were also
Mm-hmm.
other issues going on in the business, a lot of financial issues, which I'll talk about when I get to Bea Colette. But I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. And I think
Mm-hmm.
being an entrepreneur, it's very helpful to have worked at a startup, uh, one that you're not running first to see firsthand. And there's a lot of things I'm not doing right now, but it was at the time of working at Something Navy, there were no consequences to me. So it was like
Right.
I could learn from other people's mistakes and then apply that. And at the time when I left, I did not know I was going to go start a business. I
Mm-hmm.
actually took a full year. I figured that out pretty soon after I left. But I mainly left because I was like, I can't do this long distance thing. I can't lead this team. There was issues with the business. And then I was like, I've worked, I don't know what it was like 12 years straight with no break. I've always jumped from a job to a job. Like I've never even taken there's never even been like a week off really.
And
So
at
I was
this
like,
point, did you have two or just one at home?
I had 2. And you know what? It was my second that was when I had pretty bad postpartum after my
Mm-hmm.
second. And I would get debilitating anxiety, like shaking on planes, leaving them, going to New York. And just like,
Oh,
it was just,
heartbreaking.
I would like absolutely dread the trips. And then once I was there in New York, I was totally happy. But it was like those plane flights were just
Yeah.
so awful. For me, it's just my anxiety was so bad. So that was kind of like my second was kind of the catalyst to like thinking, okay, I think I need to do something where I can be based in Dallas and like feel like I can be in Dallas and not
Yeah.
one foot in, one foot out. Because up until then, I really felt like I was one foot in, one foot out. Like, are we going to move back to New York? Is there still a
Mm,
world in which we raise our family in New York?
yeah.
Um, so that was that. And then when I left, I really was like, and this is what I told them too. I was like, I'm not going to any other job. I don't have like anything else lined up. I just need, because I think I resigned in July of 2022. I was like, I just need a month or two to clear my head and then figure out what I want to do with my life
Yeah.
and my next steps. And that's when I started consulting a little bit. That kind of like fell in my lap. People were just like, "Oh, hey, you're now kind of a free agent. Would you ever want to consult on this?" Or, "I'm an influencer, and can you help me, work on my partnerships or try to find brands that would want to work with me? And how do I set up a rate card or that kind of thing?" So like helping influencers monetize their personal businesses, and then also just some smaller female-founded businesses. I was helping with them like launch product collaborations and marketing strategies. So I learned pretty quickly that I do not like consulting, and I'm like an all-in person. So
Mm-hmm.
spending only a couple hours per week with a client and not like being in the company Slack and like being in every
Fully
brainstorm.
integrated. Yeah. Right.
I felt like I wasn't. I don't know. I'm just such an all or nothing type of person. It's very hard for me to like skim the surface,
Well, it's
and
probably what makes you so good at your job is that,
it's
you're
a
not just
blessing and a
gonna.
curse, I would say. So you understand. um, so is this a really long-winded answer? Was there another question you wanted?
So no, and well, you know what? I forgot what my question was. Well, I was talking about, well, I want to know, like, consulting, you did that for a little bit. What brought you to what you're doing now with Bea Colette? And, how did you use all of these tools, all of these experiences to shape what you're doing now, which is
Mhm.
a really incredible concept in business and,
Thank you.
something that I can speak to as a mom. I am beyond proud that someone like you can put this all together and do it while gracefully raising 3 children and, also you're an influencer as well.
Oh
It's
gosh.
there's a lot, you have a lot of plates spinning, I can imagine. So tell me,
Thank you.
how did you get to the point where you wanted to open Bake Colette?
So it's funny because during a Something Navy retreat. I was flying home from the retreat, and it was one of those flights where the stewardess comes on and is like, "We have no Wi-Fi." And I was like, "Well, I have nothing to do on this flight." I was like, I haven't downloaded any podcasts. I have
Uh-huh.
literally saved on my phone. I don't even have a book. Like, what am I going to do? So I pull out my computer and I had a Microsoft Word doc open, and I knew at this point I was going to leave. And I randomly started writing this idea about this children's business I wanted to start. This was in like May of 2022. Um, and I just wrote about how I was like, I love Masonette, and this is not no diss towards Masonette, but it's this huge marketplace of children's brand. They have like every
Mm-hmm.
brand. And I was like, I love it, but it's too overwhelming for me to shop at. I want to find these brands that I've either seen in Europe or discovered on Instagram to one place. Like, I don't want to be clicking across all these different websites to find cute clothes for my kids. I would love to bring it all to like a one-stop shop, but not have it be a website that is like secondary to the store. I was like, I want it to be e-commerce first. If there's a brick and mortar eventually, maybe it's really not in my strategy, but I wanted it to be a very, very like just intuitive, modern, savvy website that is not like an afterthought. Because a lot of children's stores started as brick and mortar, and then their website is kind of like a janky,
Right. It's like
that's
not super user friendly. It's not
yeah.
organized. Yeah.
I was like, I want this to be so easy, really beautifully done, but also something it's not just children. I like my whole concept has been since day one is to be more of like a family destination and like a
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle brand. So you'll see that in the branding and the web design, but I didn't want it to feel juvenile. I wanted it to just feel like elegant and sophisticated. Um, so I wrote this whole business plan. I shut my computer and didn't think about it until 4 months later. And then I was talking to one of my best friends about this idea because we always complained about how we would jump around these websites, but then you'd get to the checkout and then like, it'd be $40 shipping, or we just had so many complaints about all these little websites. And all I wanted to do was fuse it into one and make it super curated so you're not scrolling for hours or just feel overwhelmed. I was like, and I just want wardrobe. I don't want toys and I love all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff, but I don't want like that kind of stuff. I just want kids' clothing and shoes. And that's it. Um, anyways, so and then I was like, wait, I actually like wrote about this all down once. And I remember like pulling that document back up. Um, we were originally going to start the business together, this friend and I, and then and I love her so much for this because I would have never started this business if I didn't think she was doing it with me. But as we were kind of like getting
Mm-hmm.
about it, and I had, made the LLC and, started getting all of like our Texas legal documents in place and all the things. She was like, I love you so much, but this is your baby and this is not mine. And like, I want you to go do this and I believe in you, but I'm here to support you and root for you, but I'm like, this is not mine. This is yours. So she kind of like pushed me into the deep end.
Uh-huh. And you're like, well, I'm here. Now we're really doing this. There's no turning back.
Yes. So that was in like September of 2023 or 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So over the next year, it took me that whole year to kind of like prep, go source the brands I was going to work with, put my whole like pitch deck together for these brands, to find a web developer, find a branding designer, develop the site, go to these different shows, find brands that would want to work with me based off of like a little branding deck that I would send them. Like, I don't have a website, but here's what it's going to look like,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
um, and throughout that year, I was still consulting because I knew I would do it just for a little bit longer, just to make some income, kind of keep me busy on the side while also developing this business concept.
Mm-hmm.
And then we launched in September of 2023. To answer your question of like, how did I know I could do this? I definitely didn't. And I think that year of like September 2022 to September 2023 when I launched it, I got coffees I think I had 5 coffees a week. Just every morning, I would be asking anyone and everyone who had done anything in e-commerce and retail. And I had gotten exposure to that when having worked at Something Navy, but just
Mm-hmm.
like learn. And I really learned that you can learn at least one thing from everyone. Maybe your
Yeah.
conversation is not always relevant to what you're doing, but I just asked the dumbest questions, and I had some really great mentors that helped me understand buying strategy, because I find all these children's clothing that I love. And then I'm like, wait, but how many should I do in size 18-month versus 12-month? And just how to think about, planning in that way, like financial planning and
Right.
selecting different quantities per size and all that stuff. So I really just tried to meet with as many people as I could and learn from as many people as I could who were willing to obviously share that information with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just I'm so appreciative to the vendors who also just didn't even understand my concept really, but they were like, "Well, you're so excited, and sure, we'll give you some of the business." But pretty early on, what I knew I wanted my concept to be is a very unique assortment. So now and when we started, we're primarily carrying brands that are either exclusive to Bea Colette in the US as a whole, or at least we have that exclusivity in Texas. To me, it's not like if I see, and we have some great children's stores in Dallas, but if I see a brand that they're carrying, like I'll run the other way. Like I don't want to,
Yeah.
it's usually the brands they carry don't fit the Bea Colette aesthetic anyways, but
Yeah.
I don't even want to, I'm like, I want to stay in my own sandbox. I don't even want to, I just am like, I want to make my assortment super unique. So that's kind of something that now that I have some legs to stand on and I've been in business for enough, I can actually say that to brands like,
Mm-hmm.
here's how I want to work with you. Or if you can't give me the exclusivity, can we do like 3 or 4 custom styles together? And then you can still work with, other retailers in the US or in Texas, but we're going to do exclusive styles and colorways or whatever so that it feels like when you get on our site, you haven't seen that anywhere else.
Right. Oh, that's amazing.
Because obviously, starting a children's boutique, children's online boutique is not like an original idea, but we're doing things differently. Is I guess the
Absolutely. No, it's such a special, and I mean the whole experience is very unique, curated. And I love the aesthetic of the website. I think that you hit the nail on the head because I never really thought about that until you said it. When you're online clothes shopping for the brick and mortar, I mean, we all know those, particularly like around Dallas. It's a little confusing to say the least. Definitely, your shopping experience is second to none.
thank you.
So, Megan, 3 kids at home now. What are the kids' ages?
Colette is 4.5, Crosby is 3, and then Rife, my baby, is 10 months.
Oh, he's so cute. He's
Thank you.
getting so big. What a doll. Tell me, like, what is work-life balance for you?
Oh, I really don't have any. And I don't say that to um I don't say that to complain, but I do think should be talked about more.
Mm-hmm.
Um Before, I know a lot of women who have started their own thing and then had to scale back, which is totally fine. And or just like, they want to start their own thing and then realize real quick that this is my other baby. So it's like I have my kids, I have
Mm-hmm.
like friends over there, my husband. This is competing, it's such a competing priority for me.
Right.
And it just never stops. It really doesn't stop. So for me, the best thing I can do is try to be present with my kids when I'm with them. I try
Mm-hmm.
really hard, like on a Saturday morning, I try to keep my phone in my dresser drawer for the first 2 hours of the day.
Oh, that's
Um,
so smart.
just because, even when we get home from work, I might still have to approve what our social media is going out that day, or I
Mm-hmm.
have to approve an email, a newsletter that's going out that night. So like I still have to be kind of checking my phone when I'm with my kids. And so does Peter, my husband. Like he still has emails he has to tend to, even though he's always home by like 5:30, just that we can both be with the kids for 2 hours. We still kind of have to be on. So it's like weekends are our time
Mm-hmm.
that we really try to be present with them. And I mean, you're a working mom too. Like we treasure our weekends so much, and we have to say no to a lot of social things because if we don't, Saturday and Sunday is like so precious to us. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think we've gotten a babysitter on a weekend in like a year. If friends ask us to do like a kids dinner where we all can go to Muchacho and sit,
Mm-hmm.
bring our kids and do that, or come over to one of our houses, we're all in for that. Or we'll go to dinner like after the kids go to bed
Yeah. Right.
but other than that, those are our 2 days. And that like the only level of balance that we really have is like using those 2 days of the weekends to be with our kids because the work week is just like heads down, go, go, go. Some weeks I'm more present as a mom than others,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really hard. And I wish I would have known a little bit more of how hard it was going to be, but I also probably wouldn't have done it if I knew.
Yeah.
And I do think it's worth it. I do. But it's very difficult. And like just the mental load of being a mom Like sometimes I'll be in my office and I'll be in the middle of telling my assistant what I need her to do for the day. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't tell school that so and so is picking up Colette. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's
It's
like,
like your brain is all over 10 different places at once.
yeah,
I know exactly what you mean.
yeah.
Oh,
So
like if
it's
you saw the
every morning.
notes area on my
Yes,
phone, it's like a beautiful mind scattered,
yes. And then I'm like,
it's
oh, and by the way, I text our nanny and I'm like, so and so is dropping off a couch today. It's just like
yeah.
every morning I'm like, okay, what do I need to communicate today and to whom? And
Hmm.
then once I get all that done, and then when come home from work, can I really be present with my kids? It's very hard. It's very hard for me to turn off too. So that's why weekends are great because I do feel like at least emails aren't flowing in my inbox at the degree they are during the week. And that's when I
Right.
don't feel like I have to check in as much. So
Hmm.
that's my best piece of advice for anyone, any mom who has, either whether you're an entrepreneur or have any type of corporate role or whatever it is to really maximize the weekends together. Because that's like, I always feel very full at the end of a weekend. Like, okay,
Hmm.
really gotten in my time with my kids.
Yeah, you feel a little bit better about Monday morning getting away from them or,
Yes.
stepping away to tend to work. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Well, that's really good advice. And I love the, the 2 hours on a Saturday morning, just putting your phone away. And I think that's a really
Not always
brilliant.
perfect at it, but
No, but I think
some
that
days are better than others.
that's a really, really great idea to like, and even start out with like that mindset, if even if there's a reason for you to pick it up before the 2 hours.
Yes.
Um, okay, so can you share anything that's exciting that's on the horizon for Bea Colette or for you personally?
Yes. So this past December, in addition to curating your third-party European brands onto the site, we actually launched our own children's knitwear under the Bea Colette label. We sourced everything from Italy. Everything's made in Italy, all Italian yarns. Basically filling a void in my curation of products that wasn't there. And it's basically like all year round knits, little knit sets for boys and girls that you can wear from 12 months all the way to 8 years. You can run around in them. You can wear them to dinner. They're very durable. They're all machine washable. My kids wear them almost every day and they're so
Mhm.
soft. Also, my kids are so sensitive to anything even remotely itchy. So I was trying to solve for that.
That's awesome.
Like Colette wouldn't even wear, my daughter wouldn't even wear sleeves. She like generally won't unless it's our knits because she
Uh-huh.
just doesn't want anything on her arms. Like that annoys her. She has very, very
Mhm.
sensitive skin. Um, so shortly after launching Bea Colette as a curator, I knew I wanted to develop my own line. So we launched the first round of children's knits in December, and then we will be launching our second round in the spring. And then we're also launching a women's top and a men's polo, like a knit polo. So
I love it.
bringing this, like, my entire concept of, like, especially in Dallas, I mean, in Texas, because we don't get like as brutal of winters, but
Uh-huh.
these lightweight knits that you can really wear all year round and that are like very easily layered.
Uh-huh.
Like you could wear this women's knit top in the dead of winter or in the middle of the summer. It's lightweight enough that you could wear with like a little white skirt, or you could wear it with black jeans and, a blazer and
Yeah.
then a winter outfit. So I'm excited to be expanding into women's and men's so that it can be a true lifestyle brand, and starting very small because I want to see the response first and not be stuck with too much inventory or anything like that. But I'm excited to go into those categories so that when people's children outgrow the Bea Colette age range, they can then shop for themselves.
I love it. No, that's so great. Very forward thinking. I cannot wait to get one of your tops. I'll have to get one for
Excited.
Mitch too. Um, so to close out, is there any advice there's going to be some SMU students watching this or ones that just recently graduated. If someone's interested in doing what you do you have any advice for them?
Yes, I would say so. My background was journalism and then advertising sales my entire 20s. And then I launched an e-commerce website, like a website for children's clothing. I did not have a true fashion retail buying background. I think unless you're in the law, the field of law or like the medical industry,
Yeah.
you really don't have to be an expert at something. I think my point is like the reason I launched Bea Colette is because I wanted to combine sort of my ability to sell product and sell things with my understanding of just the digital world and a passion of mine, which is clothing and fashion and European fashion specifically, combining things like that I'm good at, but also with my passion. Um, I knew that I wanted to do that when I was so burnt out, but I didn't have to have that exact like pedigree to get me there.
Mm-hmm.
You can always like make a career shift is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Never feel like you have to I could have done the ad sales thing all the way through and just literally kept raking in the dough, which
No
probably should
kidding.
have, but it was very lucrative. But I could have done that all the way through and it would have been great. But it's never too late to kind of start again. It is very humbling and you have to really roll up your sleeves and also hire the right people to help you. Like I have a product
Mm-hmm.
development consultant. I have an inventory planner who helps me with quantities. None of these people are full time, but contractors to basically do the things that I was not trained in like a hard skills way to do. But I've
Mm-hmm.
learned so much from them that I could do them now on my own if I wanted to, but I have them review everything and make sure that I'm not going off the rails, with my business strategy. So I think you're fully able to take a risk. Just know you have to work really, really, really hard and also be just understand, like, be okay with feeling dumb and feeling like
Uh-huh. Asking the
you
dumb
don't
questions.
know.
How are you going to
Well,
find out the answers if you don't ask?
history, I'm constantly like, what does that mean? What is PP? What is that? What is
Yeah.
ATS? What is a TNA? Like, I was just like, pretend I know nothing. That's what I say to all
Uh-huh.
my partners. I'm like, pretend I know nothing. You were a buyer for Neiman's for 14 years. Like, I don't know anything compared to you, but I've got the heart for it. And like, I'm smart enough, I'll pick it up,
Yep.
just like, but just pretend I know nothing. So I think you can always pivot your career and use your, soft skills in a way that lends better to kind of what you're passionate about. Just know you have to work really hard, but never feel like you're stuck in one path.
Yeah. That's great advice. Well, Megan, thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon with me.
Thank you.
This has been super interesting. I loved hearing about the journey,
I hope I didn't jump around. I hope I delivered some articulate
No,
points. I feel like I've got like major mom brain these days.
we, we all do. No, you're probably because in the back of your mind you're thinking about 20 other things. No, this was super interesting. I think people are going to really love hearing about your journey and your career. So, all right. Thank you again, and we're excited to hear more about what you have in store for Bea Colette.